Welcome back to another episode of NFL News on the Boom Bust channel. I'm your host Terry, and today got a couple things that I want to talk about. I guess I call it NFL News because it's some NFL stuff, but also I want to touch on the LeBron James and Stephen A. Smith thing, which obviously is outside of the NFL, but we'll hit on that at the end. So first things first, I want to talk about Shedeur. I can't. I wouldn't say I can't hold my tongue. I've talked about it in other places, but I haven't really sat down. I planned on doing it, but I just really didn't make the time to do it. The Shedeur thing is interesting to me. I was listening to. I forgot who I was listening to be honest with you. But it was kind of I don't want to say nail in the coffin per se, but it just kind of really crystallized to me like what I've been feeling, which is the media is handling him with kid gloves, and it's so wild to me. And I was listening to a non-sports podcast, but they talking regularly, and so they brought up Bronny and Shedeur as they was just making a comparison to certain things. But I guess that's why this all kind of, those two things at least came up together in my mind. Here's the thing, man, and you, if you listen to me, I should say, then I have no issue like being objective, laying out my biases, potential biases. When it comes to Shedeur, well, first of all, I don't watch college football until draft time anyway. So there's never a stake for me in terms of teams or anything like that. Which, it's the internet. It's 2025 with the internet. People who they don't know you, couldn't point you out in a crowd of three people, and they will tell you what you doing and why you doing it. Like, so first of all, there's no collegiate alliance or allegiance, excuse me. There's none of that. I don't care. I watch purely just the game. Prior to watching the films and everything, I really didn't watch any Colorado live for real. Maybe besides the first game they played against Colorado State, but I didn't really watch them. But I did not like how Prime was handling things. I mean, I still don't like how he's handling things. And well, never mind. That got nothing to do with it. So I wasn't a fan. I mean, as somebody who is in the coaching circles and everything, and I'm not talking about, he skipped the line and that type of thing, because I don't necessarily believe the traditional coaching path makes sense for everybody. And so it's not that. It's just but I am a coach, and so the way he went about things, I didn't like. But also I don't like college football partly for that reason, because I don't really like how any of these programs kind of go about it for the most part, especially these, quote unquote CEO coaches. So anyway, all that to say, wasn't a big fan of how Prime was talking and how he was running his thing. Him making sure his kid was the quarterback. Typically, I really don't like that stuff, but, I kind of, it was whatever, like, to me. Like, you went to a HBCU, which I thought was super cool, and still have mixed feelings about him leaving, but still, whatever. You brought your son, did your thing. You went to Colorado at a time where the NCAA is shifting basically to only two conferences that matter. And so, whatever, you got a little program, okay, do your thing. So I don't know, it didn't super bother me, but typically that stuff would bother me, which we'll talk about with Bronny later. But I was just like, okay, whatever. And that was pretty much the extent of it. The only other thing with Shedeur himself is I wasn't a fan. I mean, there is things that I saw that I wasn't a fan of, like, again, this is more the Dion kind of issue where the whole program became this spectacle and you invited it, but then you want to be mad when you lose and people critique you, and different things like that stuff rubbed me the wrong way. Like, you want to make this celebrity century, you want to make this a party, you want to encourage people to buy jewelry, and I just that wasn't, I didn't like any of that. So few things about Shedeur that I knew about that, but not too much. What really got me is when you have multiple articles from multiple sources talking about how dysfunctional Colorado was behind the scenes, and pretty much how Shiloh and Shedeur were, able to run the show, and how crappy they were to people. And so look, I'm if you're a fan at all of this, my channel, I'm big into football. I'm also big into movies, and I also think they make perfect analogies a lot of time. But still, I say that to say we all listen to insiders and scoops in sports, but I also listen to it in movies and stuff. And so for me, it's pretty simple. You got the big scoopers or the big trades in Hollywood still, that when they say something, it's pretty much confirmed. But that doesn't mean they're the only ones with value. I tend to look at some of the small time scoopers and reporters and connect dots, especially when, to me, it's pretty simple. When you're hearing the same stuff about a player, or when you're hearing the same stuff in general from people with different sources, then there's where there's smoke, there's fire. That doesn't mean to me it's 100% accurate, but it means something is happening. And so I felt that way with the whole thing behind Colorado. Now, a lot of people dismiss stuff like that, whatever. Of course, you got your allegiances, okay. But to me, I was like, it makes sense. Like, if you just connect the dots, what Prime says and what he does, how the players there act, and then the allegations made by multiple former players that were in that locker room, I'm like, that again, where there's smoke, there's fire. So I was like, okay. And then you get Shedeur with Cam Ward, where they put these videos out of them working out, and you could tell, like, I mean, from some of the interviews and stuff, and again, I don't watch this stuff during the year, so this is kind of my first exposure to Shedeur. He is completely wrapped up about the wrong stuff. I mean, it is what it is. Like, that's coming out of his mouth. That ain't me, guesstimating. I mean, you could say he, focusing in on jewelry and money and all that is the right thing. So I guess that's an opinion. But as a football person, I could tell you that's not what coaches and GMs want to see. And so, again, you take all those different data points and you look at this picture of someone who comes from a famous father who's kind of known for this, and he's all about the flash. And to me, it's one thing if you want to do your own thing, like, that's cool. But as a quarterback, especially when you're the type of guy that's going to, if you want to use the term bully, that's been used before, but if you're going to belittle or disrespect other people because they don't follow the same style you do, or they're not into the same things you are, like, you grew up around a father who made more money than most of these people. So cool, you like going band for band, you like comparing cars and all that. That's what you grew up around, maybe. That's fine. It doesn't matter what it is. You could be from a farm in the middle of nowhere and like fishing. Like, you don't have to berate other people that don't. And so, especially as a quarterback, when you do stuff like that, you're creating a type of temperature and a type of feeling in the locker room that could be alienating to people. And again, to a lot of coaches, would make them feel like you focused on the wrong stuff. So, and to be honest, I wouldn't say a lot of that, but most of that came after I watched the tape. So actually, I think I only saw the whole Cam Ward thing because I was looking. Usually, sometimes I look up interviews after I watch the tape just to get a picture of the person. And I think that's where I end up even seeing those training videos with him and Cam Ward. And so, and look, there's absolutely a space to talk about the racial part of it, as Stephen A. and others have brought up with the comments made about him. But to me, it's not about that. I mean, it's not about that because, to be honest, Cam Ward talks pretty, big stuff too. But I don't feel the same way about Cam Ward as I do about Shedeur because, again, it's the context and the content of what you're talking about. Where Cam's, bragging is rooted in football. And Shedeur is not always that. And so, again, I'm not saying it's 100% accurate because I would never say that because I wasn't there. But if you take enough of the smoke and put it together, there's that. Now, the most important part, I just laid all that out so people could know. If you want to dismiss what I have to say, my evaluation, just because of how I feel about the person, that's fine. But I'm laying that out there so that it's transparent. So the important part is the film. Shedeur, outside of any personality part, because you could look at my evaluation charts and that's not really a part of my evaluation. So that's outside of that. That's not a first round pick. He's not a first round pick. I mean, you could either way you want to slice it. He's not. First of all, this is not a good quarterback class, and so what's weird to me, of one of the many things, is that people will sit here and try to argue about Shedeur. If you try to say what I'm saying, he's not a first round pick, he's not a top 10, whatever, and they'll try to argue and say you're a hater and all this, but the NFL literally told you a year ago that this was not going to be a good quarterback class, that it was nowhere near touching last year's quarterback class. So if you're the number 2 quarterback or you're a top 10 quarterback in a terrible quarterback class, doesn't it stand to reason that you're probably not a high rated prospect? I just don't. What is wrong with saying that? And maybe it's the difference in language. Maybe you want to argue he can go he deserves to go top 10 this year in this class. I think that's a different conversation. I don't agree with that, but that's a different conversation. But I'm more likely to hear that than what I'm saying. When I say he's not a first round pick, I mean historically. And to an extent this class, but historically, that's not a first round caliber prospect. But we say this every year. There's rarely 32 first round grades. Like, and again, this is not me making this up. You literally hear GM say that. You hear former GMs say that. You hear players say that, like, of talent evaluated. This is not something I'm making up. Like, I don't understand why that's hard or why that's a crazy thing to say. So if on the average year you're not going to have 32 first round grade prospects, I don't think it's crazy to say Shedeur is not a first round caliber player. So that's just systematically. But when we're talking about the actual film, like I said, either way you chop it up, not a first round pick to me. Well, I guess I'll get to that. But if you go down the list, arm talent for a lot of teams is number 1 because they could work with you on a lot of things. They can't make your arm stronger, and having a strong arm can get you out of some sticky situations. He does not have great arm talent. I don't know that his arm is as big as Dart or Will Howard or yours. I'm not sure. I mean, look, when you're a mid tier, like I'd grade it out of 5. So when you're level 3.5 arm, it's really hard to tell. Like the 5 stands out, and the 4s might be a little trickier, but the 3.5s is hard, man. But if for my money, I'm not sure that his arm is as strong as the other mid tier guys. So there's that. So then you don't have great mobility. You don't have great escapability. I think in a straight line, he's serviceable like a lot of quarterbacks, but escapability wise, in the pocket or outside of the pocket, being able just to be a runner, I don't think he's a plus. I mean, he might be average. So now the two things that get you out of sticky situations you don't have. So now you're a prototype pocket passer. So anticipation, accuracy, pocket ability. He's not great at those either. So pocket ability, and again, people will talk about the O-line, that's fine. But as you see in the league, not everybody's got to have great offensive lines, especially when you're going as high as people think you are. So that's number one. But number two, as I say with every player, there even in the NFL, I say this all the time about my Bears, Caleb Williams, Justin Fields, Trubisky. There's going to be plays where you have a chance to show it because the fans are wired to think stats. That's all they want to think, stats, cumulative stats. When you're a coach and a scout, you're looking at reps. You're looking at the rep, which is why in the Senior Bowl, for those that pay attention to that, those one-on-ones matter so much because people, a lot of time, they just need to see it once. Now, in the NFL, that's not how it works. That's not how it works to be great. You got to be consistent. But when you're a prospect, we need to see what you can do. And if I see it one time, okay, I know you can do that. Now it's our job to help you get there to be consistent. So there's a reason why the Senior Bowl, they focus on those things because it's about reps. So I don't want to hear the cumulative or the O-line, this or that. There are times where you watch Shedeur and it's not good. And it's not the receiver's fault. It's not the O-line's fault. Any of that. He was bad. And so when you have opportunities where things are clean and you do have that ability, then I should see it. And that's just not what you saw consistently with Shedeur, especially with his pocket ability. And so that's one of the biggest killers for a quarterback going into the NFL. So there's that. A lot of people say he's super accurate. I didn't really see that. Now, I mean, I probably maybe need to see more tape, but I watch, the same amount of tape I watch for the rest of the quarterbacks. I didn't see like a next level accuracy, to be honest. Excuse me. Or ball placement. I just didn't. I think some of the real bad plays I saw from him was bad technique, throwing off his back foot and all that, and he don't got a strong arm, so it looked bad. I can't necessarily say that I saw him have bad accuracy, but his accuracy didn't stand out to me as like a plus. And then his anticipation is not there. And not consistently, especially against the better teams. I mean, we saw Nebraska's like, okay, we saw what they did to them. So, look, all in all, there's some things, especially when it comes to quarterback, because I always say for evaluation is physical ability, is technique, is football IQ, and then is football character, as they say. And so with quarterback, that football IQ is such a huge part. So that's a part I'm not going to know sitting down with him. Now, listening to Dion and others over the years, they claim he's like elite at that. And so, that might sell you. But even if I'm sitting there as a GM and I check that off, I'm like, yes, he really understands the game on the chalkboard. The rest of his evaluation is not telling me first round pick. So there's that. So that's my evaluation. Now, the thing that I want to point out was just how he's being covered. It's so weird to me. I saw, again, someone say it might have been a mock draft, whatever, but they basically said what I just said. They were like, yeah, he doesn't have the mobility or the strong arm or the intent or whatever they said. They was like, but you still getting a good quarterback. Wait, what? He doesn't have any parts of the quarterback game, but he's still a good quarter. Like, how? What are we basing that off of? And then we're hearing now, like, the insiders or whoever you want to listen to, they're saying first of all, they said way before this draft season that Cam Ward, or not before this NFL season, but before, like around the time college football ended, everybody said Cam Ward is number one. The only one having a debate about it is in the media. You ain't never heard nobody say on the NFL side there's a debate going on about this. No, most teams was like, it's clear cut. And so that's how I felt when I watched the tape. I'm like, it's not even close. Like, there's no one in the stratosphere of Cam Ward in terms of a prospect. And so now we're hearing, like, there's a lot of teams that don't consider Shedeur a first-round prospect. Okay, I've been saying that. But yet, every show you watch, they should get a Shedeur. If you could get a Shedeur, that's a slam dunk. I think they'll be looking at Shedeur at that spot, probably at 5, move up to 3 to get him. What? What? What are y'all talking about? And so it ain't the first time either, because it reminds me to a lesser extent, whatever draft that was, that terrible draft with Kenny Pickett and everything. And of course, as they always do, everybody has great amnesia now. I'm talking about my friends in the scouting world and all that stuff. Sports media, of course. They all got amnesia now, but they was high on a soapbox telling us why Malik Willis could be the 2nd overall pick or the 3rd overall pick. Matt Corral out of Ole Miss, he should be a top 5 pick. What? And we know how it played out in the draft. We know how it played out in their, careers. But it reminds me kind of that, where I felt very much in the twilight zone. Because in the draft, you're going to disagree about evaluations. That's just how it goes. But it's usually not a crazy variance. You might have a prospect here or there. But that year felt like I was in the twilight zone. I was like, what are y'all watching? Are y'all so desperate for a quarterback that y'all are like literally fabricating these players' ability? And again, we saw how it worked out. That's the only thing I could compare it to. Obviously, with Shedeur, better prospect than them, but also has the big name. And I think we could call it is what it is. Like, people are cool with Deion, or at least they know he's got reach, and they don't want to upset his son. Or not upset his son, they don't want to upset him by talking bad about his son. And so, but even again, and I cannot wait to really dive into the next degree I do with rhetoric, but because I wish I had the vocabulary to explain what I'm seeing. But you can, if you watch the way people talk, they are clearly qualifying everything and saying it in a way as to give space to say, yeah, Shedeur might fall, but also trying to make it seem like they think he shouldn't. And I'm just like, what are y'all doing? And it's across the board. It ain't one network, one show, one person. It's every analyst. I've yet to see one person come out and say, I don't think Shedeur is that good of a prospect. And again, I think we can all look and say that's a symptom of the fact that they don't want to say something bad about Deion's son. But I just, for the life of me, straight football wise, I don't care about that. Even last year with Marvin Harrison. Now, I do believe people genuinely thought Marvin Harrison was that great. But I'm like, bro, I think the tape is clear as day. I don't know what y'all watching. Like, to me, it is perfectly fine. You know, this is the internet age. It's perfectly fine to point out deficits. It ain't like, deficit thinking is not great, but also it's not great to only look at positives and act like there's no negatives. That's silly to me. Like, especially when we're talking about draft evaluate, that's literally the job. Just because I tell you Marvin Harrison has stiff hips, that doesn't mean that I'm saying I dismiss everything else about this game. It's clear as day on the tape, and I should be able to say that. And the same thing with Shedeur. I'm like, what are y'all watching? And so I don't necessarily know what he's going to do. Obviously, where he goes is going to matter the most. But given his, disposition, and given the way his dad was acting about how he's going to have a hand in everything, I don't know how it's going to go for his career. But I could just tell you, evaluate him as a prospect the way I have with everybody else. He's definitely a gamble with not a lot of upside. And so I just find it perplexing to watch day after day any draft coverage where people are, again, singing his praises. And I'm just like, what? And I mean singing his praises while basically saying, yeah, he probably, he's probably not, an elite prospect. No, you know what you want to say. You're just trying to sugarcoat it. Now, credit to Mel Kiper, OG, who has stood on it the whole time. He said he likes Shedeur better than Cam, and all that good stuff. So at least he stood on that, while everybody else is trying to make this thing. Like Phil Yates, his new partner, I think, again, rhetoric, and if you watch him enough, I think it's pretty clear that he is like the new kid on the block, just trying to toe the line and, make his own name. And so Mel Kiper's the shadow, so he's not going to, buck up against him crazy. He's pushed back on him a little more this year, but either way, he is very much like, yeah, Cam Ward over Shedeur, easy. But he does the same thing where he continues to act like, oh yeah, Shedeur, could be in the top 10, quarterbacks get pushed up, the value of the quarterback. No, man. No, y'all hiding behind that. But anyway, talked a lot about that. I went longer on that than I thought. I want to talk about the NFL grades real quick. The report card came out. I'm not going to spend too much time. Maybe I'll follow up because I kind of talked pretty long already. But if you haven't checked it out, just type NFLPA report cards. You'll see the 2025. I really dig this. I just want to kind of give my praise to the whole initiative. And then I kind of want to talk about a little bit about the grades that we saw. Number one, big fan of advocacy. And I'm a data guy, as I've said before. And I'm finishing the PhD. So, when we talking about methodology and surveying and all that, that's my jam. When we talk about advocacy, that's my jam. Big supporter of well-run unions and stuff. And as we know, the NFL has the worst one in all professional sports. But they've been making some moves. You got J.C. Tretter, former player, former president, NFLPA president. He's a chief strategic officer or something like that now with the NFLPA, and he's working to continue a lot of the initiatives that he started. And one of the things he started was the report card. And I think the report card, along with the NFLPA, what is it called? Not Pro Bowlers, All Pro list, I think is excellent, excellent ideas. Excellent. I mean, and it's so easy. I ain't gonna get too into it, but I feel the same way at work and a lot of other places. I'm like, you have the captive audience. You can get this information whenever you want. Like, you're the NFLPA, you have access to every player. And so, kudos to them for using that, the space that they own, and getting this data. But on top of that, you got, like, I think he said like 74% response rate. So you got almost 75% of all players that responded. So very, very, very strong data. And this really just highlights, as a tool for players to look at when you are looking around the league. And as much as I say it recently, I don't know that people always understand. It's a regular business. It's a regular company. It's 32 different companies. When you go from one company to the other, you know, the facilities, the buildings might be different. The security might be different. The way your HR system might be better than it was over here. This place might have better food options. Like, that's how it is in the NFL. And these owners spend differently. And so J.C. Treader was talking about how when he was younger and he was talking to a new player on his team and was saying, like, or he was talking to a friend on a different team, and he was like, they were talking, and he was just like, bro, that's not what we do. And he was confused because that other player, that's the only team he been on. And he was like, wait, other teams do this, other teams do that. And, you know, it's 2025 now, but, you know, the information ain't just sitting out there. And so you got to really talk to other players to get that word of mouth. But either way, this helps players kind of get an idea of what the players in the building are experiencing in terms of, you know, just the facilities and everything. But then on top of that, it's a dual purpose because it adds that public pressure, especially with hot-headed owners who only care about their perception and trying to look like an owner. You get some guys that see these grades and they're pissed. And so it's a vehicle not only for the players to voice their opinions, but potentially push a team to improving. And I don't know, I don't want to promise this, but it's such a nice little clean layout, and it's only 3 years worth of data and 32 teams, that I'm tempted to probably pull this data into an Excel and like look at, you know, do some more data analysis to look at who's changed and what over the years. So I don't want to promise that, but that's something that I definitely could do. And I just think it's a great tool. It lets the public know, and it continues to show this narrative that it's 32 different organizations. So shout out to that. I mean, as far as you look, and part of why I want to do a data analysis is to look at the correlation to winning, which I think after the first, because this is the third report card, after the first report card, I think everybody was like, this doesn't always equal winning, because the Chiefs were really lowly ranked and they were coming off Super Bowl. So Chiefs were in the Super Bowl again this year. Let's see, they ranked 26th out of 32. If I look last year, they were 31st last year when they won the Super Bowl. This year they went back to the Super Bowl, they were 26th. So they improved, but still very lowly ranked. Philly, they ranked 22nd out of 32. Obviously, they just won a Super Bowl. Now, what's weird is last year the Eagles were 5th. So, or 4th actually. So I'd be curious to look at the changes and why they dropped so far, especially with stuff with facilities and stuff, where it probably didn't change that much, but whatever. I look at that. But Yeah, last year the Eagles imploded. They ranked fourth. This year, 22nd. They won a Super Bowl. But then you got other teams like a Baltimore who ranked pretty high. Well, they're 13th, so they're middle of the pack. Buffalo was in contention. They were 23rd actually. But then you got teams like number ones, the Dolphins and the Vikings were number 2. Yeah. So Dolphins number 1, Vikings number 2, and they were pretty highly ranked last year as well. And so they look at treatment of families, food, dining area, the team nutritionist and dietitian, the locker room, training staff, weight room, strength coaches who always usually get pretty high rankings, the team travel, the head coach, and the ownership. Now, before people go crazy, especially my Bears fans, and I don't know because they don't give the entire methodology, so I know there's some open-ended stuff where people could write in, but they don't show us that, obviously. And also, I don't know exactly what the questions are, but at least the parts that they pull out in the summary, head coach is largely based on how efficient the coach is with the players' time and how receptive they are to feedback from the team, like from the locker room. And so those seem to be the major thing. It's not about clock management. It's not about schemes and all that. Again, I don't know the full slate of questions, but it seems that's what it's heavily built on. And ownership, I think aligns pretty well. It talks about the culture they provide or how they add to a positive culture, their willingness to build a contender and all that stuff. So, yeah, you got that. Dang, I just saw the Bucks had a D+ in ownership. That's kind of crazy. But anyway, I think it's a cool initiative, along with the All-Pro thing. And those are steps that I think matter when you are advocating for your players and your union, not trying to get less practice time. So, and then these are I would say kind of passive things you can do. Like, you're not fighting to get less games. You're not negotiating to get rid of the franchise tag. Like, stuff like that is like, hardcore negotiations. This is stuff that you can do pretty easily. All you do is email or whatever all the players and say, hey, give us your feedback. Boom. Now we got report cards. Hey, you guys get to vote on the All Pros. Boom. Now we got our All Pro list. And so stuff like that over time builds leverage. And so shout out to them for advocating. All right. Last thing, Bronny and LeBron. Well, not really LeBron and Stephen A. So I think, to me, this is pretty simple. Obviously, everybody's got their own thoughts about it. But for me, it's been pretty simple. And I think overall, the comments that I've seen kind of align with that. But you do have your more extreme fans that want to go scorched earth. I'll say this. I won't be shocked anymore. But from quarantine up until, maybe last year, I was increasingly shocked at how toxic these fan bases are. And whereas I thought it might have been in my little bubble of Marvel versus DC in the movies, which was stupid to me, but I was deep in those online trenches. And then Star Wars fans became toxic. Lo and behold, it's just everything. The internet is just 0 or 100, binary, and for whatever reason, that's how people act. Most people. So I say that to say that this LeBron versus Michael GOAT conversation, as everything, has devolved into real fanatics who just, I don't know. I don't want to talk about them personally. I'll just say their behavior is extremely toxic, weird, and sad. And so like again, any really fan base that you see online, it turns into we have to attack every single thing that doesn't support our guy or our camp or whatever. So for sure, you have the LeBron fans like diehards. Let's say that you got the LeBron diehards who are going to say Stephen A is wrong no matter what, no matter what's brought up. And then you have the Jordan diehards. And I'm from Chicago, big Jordan fan, love Jordan. I consider him the greatest all time, but I'm not into diehard fanaticism. That's not, I don't get into that with anything. And so that's just me. So I can say I'm a Jordan fan. I can say I'm a LeBron fan. I can say I think Jordan is the greatest all time, and leave it at that. But you got the Jordan diehards that no matter what LeBron does, they're going to attack him for it. And like anything, as I've learned over the years, fan bases is what drive people's perception. Like, obviously, there's a handful of things you could point to that a player or owner or coach does that really kind of drives how people feel about a franchise. But for the most part, it's the fan base because that's who you interact with. You don't see LeBron on a daily or even monthly, if ever. You don't see the buses. You don't see Stephen A. You don't see Packers don't even have an owner, but you don't see Matt LaFleur. You don't see the Bears on, like, you don't see Jerry Jones. All these big discussions stem from the fans. Stephen A himself, notable cowboy troller, has said it's because of the fans. That's what happens. So online, where you got 24 unlimited access to say what you want, toxic fans create this fever that makes people maybe not vicariously is the word, but through the fans, they now hate the person. I seen it happen with the Drake beef. I've always enjoyed Kendrick. Wasn't a diehard, but I enjoyed Kendrick. And through listening to the K-bots, I started to dislike Kendrick, even though it had nothing to do with Kendrick. And so that's what happens, man. And look, at the end of the day, that's a small percent. That's probably less than 10% of the fans. But they're a loud minority online and they say the worst things. So what happens is you get a mixture of how you feel about the person or franchise, how you feel about some fans, and how you feel about the diehard fans and the discourse, and it gets all jumbled up. But to me, I think if you remove all the chatter from it and focus just on the two individuals and their words and actions, I think it's pretty simple. And I've been this way since the whole Bronny thing started. So, and again, there's people that are diehard fans that are going to disagree just because it doesn't support their guy. But I think LeBron, who as a player, nothing negative to say, as a person, haven't always been the biggest fan of the way he moves, but that's the way he moves. That's not how I would move personally. And so I think LeBron is being, people want to use sensitive as a negative. I don't really think it's a negative because I think it's a sensitive topic. I think LeBron is reacting strongly to something that means a lot to him, which is his son. And he is, because of, the way he likes to curate his perception and his image, he's conveniently leaving out the fact that he's the one that set this criticism up. So there's that. Stephen A has said, and it's all recorded, that he has only talked about basketball. He didn't say anything personal about Bronny, and he hasn't. So all these diehard LeBron fans popping up, oh, well, Stephen A, what you get, you talking about the man's son. He didn't say nothing about his son. He talked about the play. And then there's the thought that he critiqued LeBron's parenting. Now, here's what's weird to me. Again, all the diehards have started this chant of it's all fair once you start talking about how somebody parents. Yet I guarantee you, if you look at these people's internet activity, how much time they spend talking about people's parenting. Every time, you know how many videos, it doesn't even matter. It might not even be about the kid. Kid might be in the background. People in the comments lighting people up for their parents. People commenting on everything everybody does, let alone parenting. That's one of people's favorite next to cooking. And so to sit here and say like, oh, that's some unspoken rule, you could never critique someone's parenting. What are you talking about? I guarantee you those people do it all the time. And so I didn't hear that clip in question about him parenting, but it stems from the same thing. It's about the game. It ain't about, like I heard somebody on the radio earlier talking about they didn't say nothing about LeBron and or about Michael and how his sons turned out. That is literally not what we're doing. He didn't sit up here and get on the mic and say, I saw LeBron through this birthday party. I don't agree with how he did this. He too young for that. That's not what this was. We're talking about his parenting in direct relation to sports and the NBA, which they cover. And so, like, this dog and pony show, which I said from the beginning, is so similar to Shedeur. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, the people that either try to excuse it with how many people get their family jobs? Okay, this ain't a job. This is a sport. Like, it's a business. It's a career. We get it, but it's a sport. This isn't, I got you a job in the office, or I made you a manager, like, of this team of 3 people. No, this is a sport. You have to be able to play. And so messing with the integrity of that, people feel some type of way. But even outside of that, which I'm not really bent too much out of shape about, him being looked at because he's LeBron's son, but I can't say that word right now, but to build the plans for him to get to the Lakers, just so you got a photo out the first game where he got on the court with him and all that, like, bro, we know what you doing. And LeBron act like, well, I had nothing to do with it. It just happened that way. That's so crazy. Like, that's that disingenuous part that's annoying. But even with all that being said, LeBron is the one that hyped his son up. To me, is no different than the Dion. Like, if Dion's sitting there saying that, oh, he changes programs, or Shedeur changes programs, and there's no better quarterback, and da-da-da. If he's saying stuff like that, and then Shedeur goes out and looks trash, it's fair to rip him. So I just don't understand what people are even talking about. Like, how many people did that? Or he was the second 55th pick. Yeah, it's not like it was that big of a pick. Okay, whatever. You want to excuse it, you excuse it. But the fact is, once he gets to the league and he has to play, he has to play. And it's for everybody's consumption to critique. And they did. And again, it's been about basketball relative to the hype levels that LeBron pushed it to. Sure. Now, does that mean they're not diehards out here saying terrible stuff? No, of course. As I said, that's happening. We can acknowledge that on both sides. That doesn't mean Stephen A is part of that. And so people conflate these things all the time. You have to tease it apart. Even if Stephen A says something that a toxic fan might have said similarly, it doesn't mean that, oh, Stephen A is part of the toxic fan club only saying things to dismantle LeBron because he's Michael Jordan diehard. No. There's parallel thoughts, okay? So for me, I think that's pretty simple. Now, LeBron approaching him and all that stuff, to me, I think that's kind of simple as well. I don't really fault either one for kind of their response. Like, at the end of the day, that's just how it is being an adult. You make a choice, you can't get to control how people respond to it. So, LeBron pulled up on him. Or if you want to say that, he was at the game. He went and talked to him. You know, there was nothing physical. It might have been some rough words, but it was nothing physical. It wasn't like he pushed him in the corner, all that. LeBron did it in a space that was pretty safe, I would say. And, you know, that's what he wanted to do. And then Stephen A responded to it. Whether he was asked to or not, that's up, you know, I don't know. But he responded to it and he continued to respond to it. And what? Just because he walked in my face, I'm supposed to be quiet about it? No, he could talk about it if he wants. So there's been a lot of back and forth where I think, again, most people kind of say the obvious thing, like, yeah, LeBron's a father. He's pretty, emotional about a sensitive topic. He did what he did, you know, whether that was the way you would have handled it or not. That's what LeBron chose to do. And then Stephen A responded to it. And that's what it is. But there are some that try to make it like there's this clean cut. Stephen A was terribly wrong. For what? And the thing that gets me is there's so many people that said what Stephen A said. And I, for the life of me, don't understand why the fans choose to ignore that. Now, I know why LeBron is zeroing in on Stephen A, but there's so many quote-unquote LeBron fans trying to say Stephen A was in the wrong. Well, then line them up then. LeBron should be stepping to everybody. I don't know. I know very few people on these sports networks that was like, yeah, LeBron, hell yeah. Most of them was like, yeah, he doesn't deserve it, but LeBron orchestrated it, and so kudos to him. I don't see what was so different. And so that's just kind of where I land on it. Anyway, go to the comment section. Let me know what you think about everything. Get a conversation started. Share it around. Thumbs up, subscribe. And thank you for listening.